I remember that morning like it was yesterday. I opened my newest payslip and felt my heart drop. My monthly salary went from $12,000 to $10,000. No warning, no explanation. Just less. I stormed into HR, trying to stay calm. My voice shook as I asked, "Why the sudden cut? Am I in trouble?" They kept a perfect poker face. "It's part of the necessary cost-saving measures across departments," they said. No apology, no explanation, just a chilly statement, like I should have seen it coming. All day my stomach was in knots. Did I do something wrong? Are they planning layoffs? My department had been hitting goals, so why the sudden cut? I sat at my desk, trying to focus on my tasks, but the confusion wouldn't let me. And just when I thought the day couldn't get worse, a company-wide email landed in my inbox. The subject line read, "Congratulations to CEO Mark Delaney for reaching a $1.2 million performance bonus." My mind went blank. My eyes were glued to that number. $1.2 million. Meanwhile, I just lost $2,000 a month. How could they justify slashing our salaries if we're so broke, yet throw over $1 million at the top boss? I could almost hear my pulse pounding in my ears. Anger and disbelief twisted inside me. If we were so strapped for cash, how could we afford to reward him like that? I kept refreshing my bank app, hoping maybe HR had messed up. But the deposit was real. I felt betrayed, almost foolish. That night, I couldn't sleep. The next morning, I cornered one of my teammates, Marcus, at the coffee machine. Trying to stay casual, I asked if his pay got cut too. He gave me this awkward glance. "No," he said. Then he shrugged, "But at least you're still getting $10,000, right?" I'd be happy with that. My jaw tightened. I realized nobody else had been hit. I tried to piece it together. If we're saving money, why is Mark Delaney getting richer? I felt something boil in my chest. All I could think was, this is so unfair. At lunch, I scrolled through our company's PR page. Every glowing article about record profits read like a joke. My phone buzzed with a new corporate newsletter touting efficient cost reductions. They were taking credit for saving the business. Meanwhile, Delaney enjoyed a huge bonus. That night, I replayed it in my head. Me losing money, him pocketing millions. Something didn't add up. I knew I had to dig deeper. By the next morning, I'd made a list of people to discreetly question, but each conversation turned out the same. Folks gave me that classic, "don't rock the boat" look. They kept saying, "You won't find a job that pays this well elsewhere." I could hear the fear in their voices. No one wanted to risk stirring trouble. One manager whispered, "Just be thankful you still have a position." My cheeks burned with frustration. This place was paying me well, yes, but it was also draining me. Late afternoon, with everyone heading out, I decided to poke around in the shared finance archives. Nothing secret, just the standard budget summaries available to employees. But there, in the Q3 expenses, I found a random line item I'd never noticed before. Renova Solutions, $180,000. The name was completely unfamiliar, so I asked around. Some shrugged, others claimed to have no idea. What bugged me was how quiet the hallways felt, like everyone had accepted this hush-hush culture. I realized if I wanted the truth, I'd have to do it alone. I took a screenshot of the Renova entry and closed the folder before anyone spotted me. That night, curiosity ate at me. I typed Renova Solutions into Google. A bare-bones landing page popped up. No employee bios, no client list, just a stock image and a contact us form. Suspicious. The address was listed in another state with no suite number, just a private mailbox. I tried cross-referencing the phone number. It led to an automated message. "Thank you for calling Renova Solutions. Please leave a message." No live support, no real details. My gut screamed red flag. At work the next day, I asked Angela in procurement if she'd ever processed Renova's invoices. She frowned. "They're not on the approved vendor list. Must be some executive-level thing." Sorry. Everyone I talked to gave me a blank look when I mentioned Renova. The deeper I dug, the more ghostly it felt. No records, no sign of actual work, yet they were charging the company large sums each quarter, all labeled under executive initiatives. My mind spun with questions. Is this a shell company? Money laundering? A slush fund? The possibilities made me uneasy. Still, I needed proof before jumping to wild conclusions. I sat at my computer, focusing on the executive initiatives section. Each quarter, Renova magically appeared. The amounts weren't small either. I cross-checked older spreadsheets from the finance archives. Sure enough, Renova's charges showed up right when new cost-cutting measures kicked in. Department budgets got slashed, and right after, a large payment to Renova posted. Something about it screamed cover-up. Then I found a separate PDF labeled Budget Transfer Approvals. Half the text was blacked out, but at the bottom, one signature stood out: M. Delaney. It wasn't unusual for a CEO to sign off, but the secrecy around Renova was suspicious. Mark Delaney had personally approved these vendor expenses. The timing felt too perfect to be a coincidence. Salaries drop. Renova gets paid. For an hour, I just stared at the documents, thinking. My hands trembled. Was this some scheme to funnel company money somewhere? If I was right, it meant the CEO was basically stealing from employees and funneling it to a phantom vendor. I saved everything onto a secure drive, my heart pounding. This wasn't just a hunch anymore. It was the start of something big. Over the next few days, I reached out to trusted coworkers, people I knew wouldn't rat me out. I found an engineer whose entire team lost their annual bonuses. I spoke to a project manager who'd seen her budget for vital tools cut by 60%. She told me they said we had to tighten our belts. I carefully pieced together our stories. The pattern was crystal clear. Whenever there was a cost reduction, Renova's fees jumped. While many employees didn't lose their base pay, they got hammered elsewhere. Benefits slashed, training funds canceled, equipment budgets gutted. One coworker confided, "We all know something's up, but it's too risky to ask questions." That fear was palpable. People felt powerless, like it was better to accept the scraps than challenge the system. I couldn't stand it. Anger replaced my initial shock. We worked hard, meeting goals, driving profits. Then Delaney swoops in, cuts corners, and grabs a massive bonus. Now it looked like he'd set up a fake vendor to siphon even more money. This was bigger than just my paycheck. It felt like an entire company under siege by its own leadership. I spent my lunch break hidden in a quiet corner, scrolling through archived presentations. My pulse raced when I discovered an executive review deck from last quarter. One slide caught my eye. Cost savings from department streamlining contributed to Q4 bonus eligibility thresholds. The bullet points bragged about cutting millions in operating expenses. Meanwhile, Delaney's smiling face was featured, praising the lean new approach. In other words, the more they cut from us, the bigger his bonus. I glanced at the final bullet. Key external partnerships contributed to strategic performance. I recognized the code. External partnerships had to be Renova. More proof that this phantom company was part of the big plan. Slash our resources, funnel the saved cash into initiatives, and justify executive bonuses. It all connected. My stomach churned. This wasn't an honest mistake. This was methodical. I imagined Delaney signing off on each cut, smiling as his personal windfall grew. I printed the slide and tucked it into my bag. My fingers shook with a mix of anxiety and rage. If I was caught, I'd be in deep trouble. But every piece of evidence made my next steps clearer. By now, I had a small mountain of digital files, budget sheets, slideshows, emails praising strategic external services. Every single quarter told the same story. Pay cuts or budget slashes took effect, and soon after, Renova's fees appeared. No second signatures. No internal review. Delaney's name was the sole approver. I could practically visualize the funnel. Money saved from employees, redirected to Renova. The question was, who actually owned Renova? I tried searching for officers or board members connected to Renova, but the trail went cold. The website gave me nothing, and state business listings were minimal. Then I found a clue. A line in a routine vendor compliance report that read, "Validation of Renova's incorporation is pending." That was it. Still, everything else pointed to one truth. Someone at the top was orchestrating this scam. And the more I saw, the more sure I became it had to be Delaney himself. Why else hide it? I saved each new document onto a hidden USB drive. My heart pounded every time I typed in my password, afraid someone might notice. I was stepping into dangerous territory, and I knew it. My big break came late on a Friday night. I'd turned off my computer, but a lingering thought nagged me. What if the LLC details are on the state's business registry site? I fired my laptop back up. Sure enough, I found a snippet referencing the tax ID. The registered agent's name, Delaney. Not Mark, but the same last name, and the address matched that random P.O. box. My mouth went dry. This all but confirmed my suspicion. Delaney was funneling company money into a shell LLC, disguised as Renova Solutions and effectively paying himself. I took screenshots, triple-checked everything, then stored the data on an encrypted folder. My fingers trembled as I typed CEO fraud in my personal notes. The gravity of it weighed on me. This was no longer office gossip or petty corporate greed. This was serious, likely illegal. I knew I had to be stealthy. If Delaney caught wind I was onto him, I'd be fired, or worse. So I kept my head down at work, nodded at management, and smiled like everything was normal. But inside, my rage simmered, fueling me to keep digging. I walked into HR under the guise of routine vendor compliance. I casually asked, "How do we vet outside suppliers, especially ones handling six-figure sums?" The HR manager's face tightened. She quickly typed something on her keyboard, then her expression changed from polite to guarded. "That's above your level," she said. "Focus on your role." My stomach dropped. So much for subtle inquiries. I gave a nervous nod and left. A few hours later, I got an email from my boss. "We'll need someone else to take over your high-priority project." No explanation. I felt the walls closing in. They were doing it on purpose, isolating me. First, they cut my salary, then they reassigned my projects. It was retaliation, pure and simple. I went home that night, slammed my door shut, and paced around the living room. My phone buzzed with a text from a friend. "What's going on at the office? Heard your project got pulled." I typed back, "Not sure. Something's up. We'll keep you posted." I looked at my USB drive, loaded with documents. I was in too deep to back out now. If I wanted justice, I had to move carefully. I got the calendar invite at 8 a.m. Performance review, meeting room 3. My heart sank. Normally, performance reviews were scheduled weeks in advance with official guidelines. This was completely out of the blue. I entered the room and 3 managers were seated, flipping through a thin folder. They gave me generic feedback. "We've noticed you seem distracted, and is there a reason your work quality has declined?" I argued I'd been meeting deadlines, producing solid work. They exchanged looks, scribbled notes, then wrapped it up. No clarity, just intimidation. As I left, an IT staffer caught me in the hallway. They warned, "Your email was flagged for non-role aligned access. Be careful." My pulse skyrocketed. They'd caught wind of my rummaging through budget files. My stomach churned. I rushed back to my desk, half expecting my login to be revoked. Sure enough, half my folder permissions were gone. It felt like a clampdown. They were isolating me, removing access, and trying to force me out. That evening, I found my desk area suspiciously tidy. Some documents I'd left out were missing. Someone was cleaning up, hoping I'd just fold under pressure. I sat in a small law office downtown, hands trembling as I sipped lukewarm coffee. The whistleblower attorney leaned forward, scanning my stack of evidence. His name was Ben, and he spoke calmly but firmly. "You have a strong case," he said. "If fraud or tax evasion is involved, this could be significant." He explained the process. "Document everything. Keep it secure. The IRS has a whistleblower program that can reward you with a percentage of recovered funds if this is proven." My mind spun. I wasn't after a payout, but the thought of hitting Delaney where it hurt felt satisfying. Ben reminded me the risks were high. Companies don't take kindly to whistleblowers, but if this leads to federal action, you'll have protection. I nodded, trying not to show how scared I was. I went home, locked my USB in a fireproof box, and emailed a backup to myself on a secure account. The next morning, I felt a jolt of fear walking into the office. Yet part of me felt a surge of purpose. With legal backing, I wasn't fighting alone anymore. After my meeting with Ben, I became laser-focused on the bonus structure. I found an old internal memo detailing how Delaney's $1.2 million bonus was unlocked. He had to reduce overall corporate expenses by a certain percentage each quarter. I cross-referenced that with the exact timing of my pay cut. Sure enough, each wave of cost reductions directly pushed the company closer to Delaney's bonus threshold. The more we lost, the more he gained. It made me sick. That same memo included a breakdown of external vendors critical to meeting cost reduction goals. Of course, Renova was listed front and center, but there was a twist. The memo claimed that optimizing vendor use replaced in-house projects, thus reducing overhead. In reality, Renova wasn't providing any real services. They were just an empty shell. I stepped away from my computer, my heart pounding. Delaney had systematically orchestrated pay cuts, resource slashes, and fake vendor payments, all so he could pocket that massive bonus. The betrayal stung worse than ever. I felt a rush of determination. The bigger the scheme, the bigger his downfall. I swore I'd see this through. I stayed up late, my computer screen the only light in my dark living room. Searching, cross-referencing. My eyes burned, but I refused to stop. I found 2 additional LLCs tied to the same P.O. box and the same business agent. Their names were equally vague, something like Nova Tech Associates and RNV Innovations. I pulled up the corporate payments ledger. Sure enough, these 2 shells had also billed the company for consulting services. Collectively, the trio raked in over $500,000 this year alone. My head spun. This was more than just a shady side arrangement. This was grand-scale fraud. Everything pointed back to Delaney's circle. Same addresses, same pattern of payments, same hush-hush approvals. If the board or shareholders discovered this, it could tank the entire company. The magnitude of it all made me uneasy. I was just one employee with a USB drive of incriminating files. But that also gave me strength. Delaney might have power, but he couldn't hide this once it was out in the open. The illusions of executive prestige would shatter under scrutiny. My heart hammered as I typed the details into the IRS whistleblower portal. I outlined each suspicious invoice, each questionable vendor, each direct link to Delaney's signature. I attached spreadsheets, PDFs, and internal memos. Finally, I hit submit. A confirmation email arrived in my personal account. Thank you for your submission. We will review your claim. That was it. Anticlimactic, yet I felt like I'd just jumped off a cliff without a parachute. My phone buzzed. It was Ben, my attorney. I told him I had filed. He breathed a sigh of relief. That's a huge step. The IRS can move slowly, but if they bite, it's serious. I spent the next few days feeling both exhilarated and terrified. At work, I pretended everything was normal, even as my team's resources kept shrinking. Rumors circulated that more budget cuts were coming. I bit my tongue, thinking, you have no idea what's about to go down. Each night, I'd check my email, half expecting an IRS update, but nothing. I reminded myself of Ben's words. You might not hear anything for a while, but be ready when you do. Days turned into weeks, and my life felt like a balancing act. At the office, I kept my head low, hoping I wouldn't draw more attention. But subtle changes were everywhere. IT bulletins warned about data security. The CFO sent out a memo about new expense authorization processes. I walked around like a ghost, always looking over my shoulder. In the lunchroom, casual banter was replaced by whispers. I overheard someone say, "We can't trust anyone right now." It felt like the walls were listening. One evening, I was tidying up my desk when I caught a glimpse of the compliance officer, eyes locked on me from across the room. She quickly looked away, but I knew they were on high alert. It made me queasy. Could they sense I was behind the leaks? Yet nothing happened outright. No direct confrontation, no official mention. It was like calm water hiding a riptide beneath. I reminded myself, the IRS works in silence at first. The longer things stayed quiet, the more paranoid I got that Delaney or someone else might strike preemptively. On a rainy Monday morning, I arrived to find an email. 8 a.m., team meeting canceled. A finance manager announced their early retirement in a terse message. No farewell party, no explanation. Rumors flew. People whispered that they had been forced out. By lunchtime, I noticed top executives looked anxious. One of them actually sprinted to the elevator, phone pressed to their ear. I felt a jolt of excitement. Was the IRS knocking on doors already? Was the board closing in on Delaney? That evening, as I was about to leave, my phone rang. It was Ben, my lawyer, his voice tense. I just got word the IRS has opened an investigation. They're coming. My pulse thundered. This was it. The real deal. I thanked him and hung up, my heart slamming in my chest. Everything I'd worked for, gathering evidence, risking retaliation, was finally in motion. I left the office that night feeling oddly calm. I drove home in the downpour, headlights flashing on wet roads, thinking, Delaney's days are numbered. One way or another, this company's about to face the truth. I spotted them as soon as they stepped out of the elevator. 2 men, dressed more like accountants than law enforcement, walked directly to the executive wing. No one announced them or offered a tour. They were escorted in by Delaney's assistant. The whole thing took maybe an hour. Then they slipped out as quietly as they came. All day, people whispered, "Who were those guys?" The rumor mill churned. Someone swore they saw government badges, but no one was sure. I watched from a distance, adrenaline pumping. Could it be the IRS? Or maybe external auditors? Either way, something was definitely happening. The next morning, a company-wide email stated Delaney would be taking personal leave immediately. No explanation, no timeline. The tension in the building skyrocketed. People asked, is he sick? Family emergency? But I knew the real reason. Every step felt surreal, like watching a slow-motion movie. I thought about how quietly those men had arrived and departed. It reminded me that big investigations often start softly, like a stealthy approach before the hammer drops. I tried to act natural, but inside I was buzzing with a mix of fear and triumph. Suddenly, the entire finance system was locked. My colleagues panicked as reimbursement requests bounced back. Project leads couldn't access basic budget info. An ominous email from HR declared, all inquiries related to financial governance must go through legal. People were furious, but also uneasy. It was like a city under curfew. Everyone tiptoed, avoiding direct questions. The rumor was that some external agency demanded complete financial records, meaning the house of cards was trembling. At lunch, the cafeteria buzzed with hushed conversations. A friend whispered, "They're definitely hiding something. Why else lock down everything?" I just nodded, trying not to show how much I already knew. That evening, I strolled past the executive offices. They were dark and empty. Delaney's assistant was gone. A posted note said she was out of office. The quiet was eerie. For a moment, I flashed back to the day I first discovered Renova's suspicious charges. It felt like a lifetime ago. The tension was almost suffocating. Every day, more employees seemed to realize the top dogs were in trouble, but no one dared voice it publicly. I entered a small conference room to find the HR manager and a company lawyer waiting. They wore polite smiles that felt more like interrogation lights. They asked about my role, the files I'd accessed, and how budgeting typically works in my department. Their questions sounded casual, but felt loaded. I played it cool, answering politely, giving just enough detail. My heart thumped in my chest, but outwardly I tried to appear calm. Halfway through, the lawyer asked if I'd come across any unusual expenses. I shrugged. Not that I recall. A total lie, but I wasn't about to reveal anything. They took notes, occasionally exchanging glances. After about 30 minutes, they dismissed me with a forced smile. "If you remember anything else, let us know." The minute I got back to my desk, I texted Ben, "They're fishing for info." He replied within seconds, "They know the IRS is involved. They'll do anything to contain this." A chill ran through me. The company's approach was clear, gather intel and clamp down. But they had no clue I was the whistleblower. If they suspected, they didn't show it, yet. I checked my email first thing in the morning. There it was. Mark Delaney has resigned to pursue new opportunities. We thank him for his service. No fanfare, no big farewell event, just a cold, corporate statement. Instantly, the internal chat system lit up. People posted shocked emojis, question marks, half-joking memes about the Titanic sinking. It was chaotic. Everybody sensed the real story was bigger than pursuing new opportunities. I felt relief. A surge of validation swept over me. After everything he'd done, slashing salaries, funneling money into shell companies, and rigging those cost cuts for a massive bonus, he was finally gone. But part of me also felt uneasy. Just because Delaney left didn't mean the company's problems disappeared. I wondered if the board had forced him out, or if the IRS had cornered him. I got up, walked to the break room, and overheard coworkers gossiping. He probably bailed before they could fire him. Must be something shady. I sipped my coffee, feigning ignorance. But inside, I was almost giddy. The CEO's downfall was no longer a secret. It felt like dominoes. By noon, the CFO was stepping down. 2 procurement leads followed, citing personal reasons. A bombshell memo from the board declared a complete external audit, urging employees to bring forward any concerns confidentially. The entire building hummed with tension. People traded glances in hallways, trying to gauge who knew what. Some were panicked, worried their roles and shady deals might surface. Others felt triumphant, hoping for a clean slate. That afternoon, I got called into my boss's office. I expected another interrogation, but instead, she offered me a raise and a new position. The exact phrasing was, "We value your contributions. Here's an NDA to formalize the arrangement." My throat went dry. I recognized it for what it was. Hush money. They wanted me locked down, silent. I politely asked for time to consider. Then I left the office, feeling a strange mix of anger and validation. A bigger paycheck couldn't erase what they did. I'd come too far to be bought off now. The pen hovered over the NDA's signature line, but I couldn't do it. My stomach twisted at the thought of letting them bury the truth. I set down the pen, walked out of the building with that folder under my arm, and drove straight home. Once there, I drafted an email to a well-respected financial journalist I followed for years. I wrote, "You need to see this. Multiple shell companies, fraudulent bonuses, and complicit executives. Here's my evidence." I attached the entire archive, Renova files, bonus memos, cost-cut slides, everything. My finger trembled as I hit send, but I felt liberated. No more secrets. The next morning, the headline broke on multiple news sites. Executive bonus scandal, fake vendors, real consequences. I stepped into the office to find absolute chaos. People crowded around computers, phones buzzing, some reading the article in stunned silence. The board scrambled to manage the PR nightmare. Everyone knew the cat was out of the bag. I felt a weird sense of calm, watching months of frustration finally turn into something real, something that demanded accountability. The company's reputation plummeted overnight. Angry shareholders demanded answers. More staff resigned or were placed on leave. Journalists uncovered that Delaney wasn't just using Renova, he had a web of fake vendors stretching back years. The headlines were brutal. CEO charged with tax fraud, wire fraud, and executive misconduct. I read them, feeling both satisfaction and shock. I never expected the scandal to grow this big. But I also knew how meticulously Delaney had orchestrated everything. Meanwhile, I received official confirmation from the IRS. They'd validated my claim. The letter stated I might be eligible for a percentage of any recovered funds. I felt a surge of relief. At least now I knew they believed my evidence was legit. In a follow-up, my lawyer explained that if Delaney was found guilty, the company might owe the government a hefty sum in penalties and back taxes. A portion of that could come my way. I shook my head in disbelief. This started as a fight for fairness. Now it was a national scandal. Still, my main satisfaction came from seeing justice. The big fish had finally been caught in his own net. After the dust settled, I handed in my notice. A few coworkers shook their heads, saying, "You should be grateful you're still making 10 grand. But I was done. The company tried to bribe me into silence, and that told me everything I needed to know. I began consulting, helping others who faced toxic workplace politics. My phone started ringing off the hook, people wanting advice, employees in similar situations, ex-colleagues offering leads. It felt good to transform my pain into something productive. News broke that Delaney was indicted on multiple felony charges. The scandal was the talk of the industry. The company tried to rebuild its image, but trust was shattered. Employees started sharing their own horror stories. Audits revealed more hidden scams, more fake vendor deals. Each new report felt like another validation that my Whistleblower Act had been necessary. One evening, as I wrapped up a client call, I paused to reflect. They told me I should be grateful to still make 10 grand, but I'm grateful I didn't stay silent. If I had, this massive fraud would have continued, hurting more people.